Ken Starr, independent counsel, who's pursued Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and many other people who are notable in politics, has passed away. So we'll be talking about that, a little bit of his career, and what the name meant to me, which honestly, because of the age that I was during the Clinton trials, was not as much as it was to other people, but we'll talk about that. In other news, the White House and Congress are desperately speaking with the rail union to try to keep the supply chains running, including Amtrak and freight. So we'll be talking just a bit about that and what that means, especially given the fact that we had a 1,200-point dump in the Dow yesterday. Tim Ryan comes out and says the quiet part out loud, saying that we need to kill and confront the MAGA movement. With us being so close to the Philadelphia Independence Hall speech, I would say that he's probably taking a few lashes from his fellow Democrats in private for what he has said in public, but we will talk just a bit about that and what that means. And Border Patrol is apologizing desperately after its official account reposts Stephen Miller. Yes, apparently he can still hurt you. Apparently. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to the backup channel. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a fairly full show today. It's going to be a lot of different stuff, and I know that at some point we've got to talk about the special master thing, and you guys know my stance on that. You actually do. When we're sitting in a situation where we're looking at, okay, are we talking about Trump? Are we talking about Biden? Are we talking about the economy? This may actually be costing me some viewers right now because a lot of other people want to go back and talk about the Orange Man. But really, honestly, this close to midterm season, I do want to stick the message and stay with the message of this is what's happening to you, to your families. And, I mean, if you put the Donald on the ballot, it stops being a referendum on the current presidency that has wrecked the economy. In a situation where he was handed the ability to make the economy strong right from the beginning, but we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about some of the other stuff with the speech that's bad, but the supply chain thing. That is like the last thing the Biden admin needs right now. It is on top of the Dow that we saw yesterday. This is just another hammer to them as we come in and they try to make their case as people start running out for the midterms. Now, oddly enough, we're starting to here talk about some of the early voting. I don't know who's already early voting. I believe some states are. I think Pennsylvania they talked about is going to be early voting, at least after the debates come back out of here. So there are some conversations to be had, but we are in midterm season right now. It's getting to be that time. I actually have to get the midterm date out here so I can take that day off because we are going to do a full day stream for that. We're going to do Contemporary. I'm going to take a little break for lunch, and then, we're going to do a whole day stream to go talk about what's happening in the midterms. It's going to be exciting. So I'm going to see if we can round up some guests, get some people on for this, but we're actually going to sit down and discuss the issues that are coming in as people are coming out for the polls. Plus, if we get off and finish out contemporary, that does give me a chance to go back out and do my civic duty myself. So we've got to get to it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out PJ Patriot. Go check out KTZed, Tweets by Brit. Go check out the No Gimmicks podcast, Mr. Behavior. Go check out all that great programming, because these are great people who attempt, again, to bring you news by the common man for the common man. So go check out all of them and enjoy their content. It's content that comes curated for me. It's highly recommended, and it gets you away from both the mainstream media and the missing link media that tries to be like me, where I'm just sitting in my living room, essentially, talking to a microphone. They try to pretend that they're like us, but really, honestly, they are big corporate media entities just the same. So go and check that out. Go check out all that great programming. And let's get into the news. And we are going to start today talking, as usual, about the Dow, but I think it's going to have a little bit more significance today. Actually, let me get the screenshot up here, because it looks like what we have reset, but I've actually got the numbers because, well, we were talking about them in a group chat last night. Let me get that up here. Come on, I know I have it. Yep, there it is. So those are the numbers screenshotted from last night. It's the same number as here, but in that number we can see where it dropped yesterday. Almost 4% drop in the Dow yesterday, and it started to turn itself back up towards the end, which we're getting to a point too where you dump out 1,200 points out of an index like this, and there's no place else for it to go but up. It can continue to drop and do a sell-off again, but at some point here, people are going to start seeing the stocks that sold, that are officially on sale right now, and they're going to go back out and say, hey, I can get this at a discount. So that is what we see off that number, and that's a brutal number. Now, it does look like, when I looked at it last night, I haven't looked at it again this morning, it does appear that the futures are coming back up, but again, who doesn't look at big name stocks that were expensive yesterday that are now on sale right now and said, hey, I bet you I could take a little bit of growth off that, but we'll talk about that when we get into the IBD article. From the Bitcoin, that is also not good news right now. Actually, get a refresh off of that. Looks like on the day, it climbed back up, but it fell again. It tried to climb back up, and then it spiked down again. It looks like it tried another rally and dropped again, and that's just throughout today. The Bitcoin sitting at $20,252 and 90 US cents. That is up $109 and 70 US cents on the day, but remember, we had talked about a possible recovery and approaching the 23,000 mark yesterday, which it was doing. However, it hit that approached that 23,000 mark. It never hit the 23,000 mark. And then it fell off a cliff yet again, coming back down to settle itself into the 20,000 range. So some people probably made out and sold off not exactly bandits, because it's not a huge increase in your Bitcoin, but some people probably did make a little bit of money off of a short squeeze coming off of that. But it does look like back again, we're looking at a point where people are selling off because they need the gas, they need the groceries, and there's no sign of the inflation stopping. Even with your gas coming down and your energy costs coming down because of the gasoline prices, even with that, the Biden admin just cannot combat the inflation. So that's what we see for that. Looking in at your gas. Now, your results, these results that we have in Madison area may not be typical. Talking to a friend in Texas last night who has informed me that their prices are starting to tick up a little bit. Ours are ticking down, with 319 staying steady throughout most of the area, except for the Woodman's out in Sun Prairie, just outside of Madison, coming down to 318. So we're actually on a slight, ever so slight downtick. I do predict that we will see, unfortunately, a bigger uptick coming before we get into the midterm times, which may, I don't know, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens with this as it comes down to whether or not Biden gets an ability to mandate. I do think at this point the House is a foregone conclusion and Biden's a lame duck for the rest of his presidency. How that will play out for him and his 2024 prospects remains to be seen. There's Hong Kong to be brought into, and there's also the fact that if he doesn't have the mandate, then he can just go back and sit back and not do any more damage. But we'll see what happens with that, and we'll continue to watch that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures stock dive on call for biggest Fed rate hike in 40 years. Apple, Tesla tumble from Ed Carson. Actually, change out my left screen here. See that we got a few people coming in here and watching. Awesome. Let's see. From Ed Carson, Dow futures turned slightly lower on Wednesday, along with the S&P and the Nasdaq reversing from modest gains. Early as Treasury yields keep rising, the stock market rally plunged Tuesday on a hotter-than-expected inflation report, with the major indices breaking below their 50-day moving averages and wiping out all or almost all of their recent gains. The August Consumer Price Index was much worse than expected. Consumer prices rose 0.1% versus views for a 0.1% drop, with food prices and rents pushing the cost despite plunging gasoline prices. The core CPI, which excludes food and energy, popped 0.6%, double what was expected. Headline inflation cooled somewhat again to 8.3%, but Wall Street expected 8%. Core inflation rose more than forecast to 6.3%. That spurred one Wall Street firm to predict the Federal Reserve will increase rates by a full percentage point at the September 20th to 21st Fed meeting. That would be the most since the early 80s, when then Fed Chief Paul Volcker waged an all-out war on inflation. And by the way, if we go to a full point, that's where you're going to start to see a lot more of the unemployment ticking up and a lot less of the labor force participation than we've seen already. Pure Storage, Tesla rival NIO, Devon Energy, Wolfspeed, and Enphase Energy showed relatively healthy action on Tuesday. Mega caps, Apple and Tesla, which had flash buy signals recently, fell hard on Tuesday, back below key levels. Nvidia and Facebook parent Meta Platforms, nobody's idea of current market leaders, plummeted to 2022 lows. Devon Energy is on the IBD leaderboard. Pure Storage is on the swing trader and was Tuesday's IBD stock of the day. Tesla and Devon Energy are on the IBD 50. Devon and Enphase are on the IBD Big Cap 20. On the futures, Dow futures fell 0.1% versus fair value. The S&P dipped 0.1, and the Nasdaq lost a fraction, which is a significant drop from yesterday because all the futures were looking good when I looked at this about, I would say, 9:30 last night, Central Time. Futures had been modestly higher early in the morning, but even then only accounted for a sliver of Tuesday's market losses. The 10-year yield rose 4 points to 3.46%, just below 11-year highs of 3.48%. Crude oil edged lower. U.S. natural gas prices rose more than 1%. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Labor Department will release the August Producer Price Index. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. It is after 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Wholesale prices fell 0.1 in August amid inflation fears. So on the producer side, it actually does look like this is like we're seeing a good sign. Not a very good sign, but a good sign. The prices that producers receive for goods and services declined in August, a mild respite from inflation pressures that are threatening to send the U.S. economy into a recession. The PPI, a gauge of prices received at wholesale level, declined 1%, or 0.1% rather, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics report on Wednesday. Excluding food, energy, and trade services, core PPI increased 0.2%. So the materials are still going up, but the energy and the get it down to the table or get it down to where they can produce it from does look like that's coming down. And food, let's see, looks like it's coming down as well, but the materials cost is still going up. So we've got a mixed bag on the PPI. So that's what we see for that. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Biden slammed for celebrating bill passage after inflation worse than expected. Stock market tanks. From Ryan Saavedra. President Biden faced backlash Tuesday for celebrating the passage of his so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which experts say will have little to no impact on reducing inflation, while the latest CPI showed today that inflation rose in August compared to last year, and while the stock market tanked. Biden claimed the bill was the single most important legislation passed in the Congress to combat inflation and one of the most significant laws in our nation's history. Hey man, we're going to fight for environmental justice and create clean energy, jobs, and apprentices at frontline fence communities that have been smothered by the legacy of pollution, Biden added. The CPI rose 8.3% between August 2021 and August 2022, according to a Tuesday report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Month over month, prices for food, shelter, and medical services continue to tick upward, producing a 0.1% overall price increase from July. Economists had expected headline inflation to fall 0.1%. Prices for food at home, a category that includes grocery store or supermarket food purchases, increased 0.7% from the previous month. Meanwhile, the prices for natural gas and electricity rose 3.5% and 1.5% respectively. Today's CPI report confirms the U.S. has a serious inflation problem. Economist Larry Summers, a Democrat, tweeted, median inflation used to be a favorite indicator for the team transitory. The month it was at its highest ever reading. Stocks plummeted on Tuesday following the disastrous inflation report, with the Dow dropping 1,276 points, nearly 4%, according to CNBC. The further noted, the S&P dropped 4.32% to 3932.69, and the Nasdaq sank 5.16% to end the day at 11,633.57. It was the worst day the stock market has faced since the early days of the pandemic. And we see this all around us. When we see me, a single guy that pretty much eats nothing but meat and raw vegetables. That's literally all I eat during the week. I do go a little bit nuts on the weekend, which is what keeps my metabolism up and keeps me hungry throughout the week, so that my body goes after the fat, which is the point of being on keto. But during the week, I make an egg bake every Sunday, and I take that to work with me in the morning. That's what I have in the morning, and then I come home. I don't eat anything for lunch, and I have some sort of meat, usually bratwursts, because they're really cheap, and raw vegetables, and it is $50 every single time I go to the grocery store, no matter what. I can't imagine what you guys who have families have to go through for that. I don't even want to begin to try to imagine that. That's a horrifying thought to me. But that is what we're seeing coming out of there. But really, honestly, what did you expect? When you spent, how long was it? 2 years from the beginning of the pandemic down to when they started looking at this and saying, hey man, I know I'm not supposed to be making any decisions here, just signing my name, but hey, don't you think we should do something about this inflation, man? Come on. When you fire hose money into the economy, cash, into the demand side of the economy, while keeping the supply side shut down, what did you think was going to happen? But that's what we have for that. That's what's coming off of our finance, and we'll be talking about the supply chain a little bit more. But first, we do have to pay a little bit of respect for somebody whom I was just on the line of being just old enough to know who this person was. During the Clinton impeachment trial, during the Whitewater trials. Get the live chat up here so we can see what you guys are doing here. From CNN, Ken Starr, independent counsel who pursued Clinton, passes away. Was it a Clinton side? I'm actually going to go and say probably not. I think that at this age that he just, and I think Ken Starr, if I remember correctly, he was a little bit portly too. I think it's probably just the fact that he got old, his heart had a condition, and he enjoyed eating. And that does take a toll on your body. But let's read from Chandela's Duster. Kenneth Winston Starr, former U.S. Solicitor General who gained worldwide fame in the 90s as the independent counsel who doggedly investigated President Clinton during a series of political scandals, has died. He was 76. Starr died of complications from surgery, according to a statement from his family. Oh, complications from a surgery, you say? Was there a certain doctor from New York who temporarily had residence in Arkansas? What was she, the doctor? We're deeply saddened with the loss of our dear and loving father and grandfather, whom we admired for his prodigious work ethic, but who also put his family first. The love, energy, endearing sense of humor, and fun-loving interest Dad exhibited to each of us was truly special, and we cherish the many wonderful memories we were able to experience with him, Starr's son Randall said in a statement on behalf of his children. Starr, who was a member of former President Trump's defense team during the first impeachment, also served as president of Baylor University from 2010 to 2016. Judge Starr was a dedicated public servant, an ardent supporter of religious freedom that allows faith-based institutions such as Baylor to flourish. Baylor President Linda Livingstone said in a statement on Tuesday. A conservative Republican, Starr's investigations into Clinton began when he was appointed by a federal appeals panel in 1994 as an independent counsel into the probe of then-President and Hillary Clinton's involvement in the Whitewater real estate scandal. The Clintons ultimately were not prosecuted in that case, but Starr's investigation in the Clintons' dealings later expanded to include Paula Jones' allegations of sexual harassment and the inquiry that led Starr to leading the investigation into the president's affair with Monica Lewinsky. The Lewinsky affair ultimately resulted in Clinton being impeached on 2 charges of lying under oath to a federal grand jury and obstructing justice, though he was acquitted by the Senate in February of 1999 and served out the remainder of his term. The scandal dominated Washington and much of the news media for more than a year, and both Starr and Clinton were named as Times Men of the Year. In 1998, Starr's investigation was seen as a reflection of an era of increasingly bitter partisanship coupled with a tabloid-like interest in the personal lives of politicians. In particular, Starr's report to Congress on the affair was criticized for containing numerous lurid details about the sexual relationship between Clinton and Lewinsky. Now, it's important to note with Starr's investigation, first there was the real estate scandal on top of that led into all this, which is where this all came down and was called Whitewater. But it is important to note, and outlets like CNN, outlets like MSDNC will try to make this be about the, as Rush Limbaugh said, the staunchy, stuffed shirt Republicans who only cared that the president was having a little bit of fun in the White House. Whereas that wasn't the case. The impeachment was about the perjury off of this. However, there's also the problem, not necessarily that Bill was getting his knob polished while he was married. That's between him and Hillary. The problem there was the dynamic employer to employee number one, and then what was considered at the time, and unfortunately still is considered, the most powerful human being on the face of the planet, and a 20-something intern fresh out of college. Whereas if you don't comply, your job goes away. I have always felt bad for Monica Lewinsky in this, not necessarily because of what she got to do or anything else like that, but the fact that, I mean, you always have to question, was this the proper decision? Were you doing this because you were coerced, because you were employed in one of the best internships you could have in your life? Or because this is something you actually wanted to do? That question would hang over my head forever if I was in that situation. Starr rejected the accusations that his pursuit of Clinton was politically motivated. It probably was. Even if it was inadvertent, it probably was. I'm going to go right out on the limb and say that. I was assigned to do a job by the AG, and that was to find out whether crimes were committed in this Paula Jones sexual harassment lawsuit. Starr said at the time, "The whole idea of equal justice under the law means you've got to play by the rules. It has nothing to do with the underlying subject matter. You must tell the truth." He stepped down from independent counsel position in October of '99, citing the intense politicization of the independent counsel process. And that's fair, and we saw this too in Trump impeachment 1, Trump impeachment 2. We will see this during Biden impeachment. If Republicans win the House, which is pretty much a foregone conclusion, we are going to see a politicization of the independent counsel process. Hell, the word impeachment at this point has become a highly politicized term, whereas the votes are coming in just because the party that's in power of the House doesn't like the particular president. And yes, I do think that Starr started this. And whether or not he did, and I do still think that even if it was subconscious, he did do it for political purposes. But whether or not he comes out and says, yes, I did it for political purposes, or no, I didn't, the people who were putting him there because he was highly partisan. And I think it's important, the fact that he pointed that out. But Ken Starr, I do hope you find peace in your next life, whatever it was that you believed in. It does appear that you are staunchly Christian and conservative, so you will probably find peace in the same thing that I would, if that is what happens to us at the end of times. And I hope it does, because otherwise I've been going down the wrong path for 38 years. But we will see. Godspeed, Ken Starr. Let's talk about Buttigieg and trains, but not the kind of trains that Buttigieg wants to talk about. From CNBC, railroad strike negotiations held up by battle over sick time policies. From Lori Ann Larocco. The top negotiator in talks to avert railroad strike accused BNSF and Union Pacific of holding up progress. Specifically, Dennis Pierce, president of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, or BLET, said the companies rejected the union's proposal for sick time policies. The primary resistance comes from Union Pacific and BNSF because of the attendance policies they have adopted, which have treated workers so poorly, Pierce told CNBC. "We're just looking for time away from work to address our medical issues. Union Pacific and BNSF attendance policies are assessing penalty points to our members when they just want to take time off for their regular medical appointments." Man, am I glad that I don't work for the rail. Attendance policies have been a point of contention for unions for years. The White House's Presidential Emergency Board, or PEB, recommended any attendance policy disputes are best resolved in the grievance and arbitration process. Well, yeah, because if you shut down another avenue of the supply chain, while diesel is sky high, you're going to have bigger problems getting food to the table. And it is not going to look good, because while the inflation that you get from the Inflation Production Act is not going to hit until after midterms, and neither is the student loan forgiveness, that inflation, that's not going to hit until February or March when Kevin McCarthy's your punching bag. This will hit about the last week of October if they shut the rail down. And that is not going to be good for anybody in office. Let's see, BNSF, which is owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, flatly rejected Pierce's claim, calling it categorically false. Rail employees are provided with significant time off. Generally trained crew employees have over 3 to 4 weeks of paid vacation and over 10 personal leave days. Man. Wish I had that. Depending on the craft and seniority, these numbers can extend to 5 weeks of vacation in addition to 14 paid holidays and/or paid leave days, BNSF told CNBC. The number of personal leave days was increased by 25% this year, which makes it easier for employees to take time off. Union Pacific, meanwhile, said it continues to push for prompt resolution that provides historic wage increases to employees and allows the railroads to prevent further disruptions to the struggling supply chain. Later, the company provided CNBC with another statement. Union Pacific understands that our employees want a different way and process other than the one that exists today. To request and receive time off for things like medical appointments, we are in active discussions with the unions to try to address these concerns. Peers said the unions withdrew their proposal for paid sick leave and substituted their request for unpaid sick time. PEB recommendations suggest the unions withdraw their paid sick leave proposal based on the existing paid time off benefits given to employees. Union negotiators offered the rail carriers a one-page, single-sided proposal to spare employees disciplinary points if they schedule routine medical visits in advance for days they would otherwise have to work, according to Pierce. You have to understand these workers are not on scheduled days. They have no scheduled days off. They work whenever they get called, he said. We're just asking for our workers to be able to go get their medical appointments done and not have to be at work that day. The Association of American Railroads in turn provided CNBC with its employee time off policy sheet. Ongoing negotiations are being collectively handled on a national multi-employer basis, a spokesman for the group said. Pierce praised some of the ideas in the PEB's recommendation, but it said it didn't come through on quality of life issues. Life isn't planned, medical events aren't planned, people need to be allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor instead of just having to be at work every day, he said. So I think the key issue is this, and there's no way we can back away from it. Pierce said that he's been in touch with members of President Biden's cabinet. He told CNBC the unions do not intend to blink on the sick time arguments. Strikes are a last resort. It does not help anyone because the employees lose money and the companies lose money, he said. We're not here to hurt the economy. Ripple effects from labor strife are affecting other parts of the infrastructure. Starting Tuesday, Amtrak canceled some of its longer distance rail services in anticipation of a service disruption. Routes between Chicago and the West Coast along Amtrak's Southwest Chief California Zephyr and Empire Builder are canceled. Portions of Amtrak's Texas Eagle route between LA and San Antonio are also suspended. Amtrak is calling the cancellations a phased adjustment, warning that disruptions could significantly impact intercity rail service. Which, realistically, I don't see where a lot of people are jumping on the Amtrak to go that long of a distance. I mean, I do see between Milwaukee and Chicago, I see that Amtrak all the time. Or Milwaukee down to the Metro or something else like that. I know they tried to do a high-speed Amtrak between Milwaukee and Madison, but that fell apart. But, I mean, when you're going on a distance that would take you 24 hours by car, and then you want to go sit on a railroad for 36 hours to go back and do that, I don't see a lot of people doing it. I'm sure there are customers, otherwise it would probably be shut down. But these passenger rails do share, especially when you're going the long distance, the same rails as your BNSF and your Union Pacific and things like that. And one of the things, and we'll talk about the White House and Congress talking about this as well, is they are between a rock and a hard place with this, because under most circumstances, they'd be able to come up and say, okay, well, we'll just, until we get this settled out, go ahead, do your little strike, go make your little demonstration, we'll transport everything by truck. You can't do that right now. You don't have the truckers. You have the trucks, you don't have the people in the trucks to do that. And honestly, Union Pacific, BNSF, under most circumstances, would be inclined to back down because, I mean, they're fixed to certain routes. Trucks can go just about anywhere that an automobile can go. And in many cases, some places that can't. If I was, under normal circumstances, a member of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, I would be looking at this under normal circumstances and saying, hey, maybe we should capitulate just a little bit. Let's do the big ass, but let's capitulate a little bit here because, yeah, they might find out as soon as they start putting people back in the trucks that our way of doing things is obsolete and we'll lose a lot of business. But at this point, while it still may be edging on obsolescence, rather, the other industry, the one that's competing with them, does not have the manpower to go back and fill in the gaps, which is a real problem for the Biden admin. And we will sit back and see where this goes off. But by the way, if they strike, they are talking about shutting down the rail lines completely, parking the trains and not letting anything go through, which actually would be really nice for my commute to work because I do have to cross across a rail, and a lot of the times they like to do maintenance or car switches and block the intersection I have to go through. But that's what we see for that. Let's talk about Congress from the Hill. Congress prepares to act on rail strike amid fears of economic catastrophe. From Carl Evers Hillstrom. Lawmakers are under pressure to avert a rail worker strike as soon as this week that would batter the nation's economy just before November's midterm elections. Republican senators introduced a resolution to impose a new contract if negotiations between railroads and unions collapse, while Democrats say they would pass legislation to block a rail shutdown if necessary. What are you going to do? No, seriously. Democrats, what are you going to do? I need to ask that question when we see something like this in the Hill. Democrats say they will pass a legislation to block a rail shutdown if necessary. Okay. You are the party of union. I know you're turning your back on much of the union at this point because of progressive policies and wokeness, but you are the party of union. Let me explain something to you. If you start sending scabs across that picket line to go back in and operate trains, you have lost the union vote entirely. I can't believe that's actually being... Well, I'm going to pass legislation to block a rail shutdown if necessary. If you are going to strike and shut down the rail lines, we are going to arrest you. How is that going to play out for you? Given the fact that, again, you have already... I mean, this is union busting that we saw out of the 40s and 50s. Coming from the party that's supposed to be the party of the union. You have screwed yourself in this. Wow. More than 115,000 rail workers will be legally allowed to strike on Friday. The cooling off period expires 30 days after the White House appointed Presidential Energy Board released contract recommendations that call for 24% raises, back pay, and cash bonuses. The two largest rail unions say the members won't vote on a contract based on those guidelines, which don't address the concerns about strict attendance policies. Railroads haven't budged from their push to ratify the PEB proposal, arguing that it's a fair compromise. The stalemate raises the odds of a strike, which would bring the transport of grain, fuel, lumber, car parts, and other key products to a halt, likely damaging the nation's fragile supply chains and sending prices soaring. Does anybody have any popcorn, by any chance? Some railroads are already shutting down their operations in advance of Friday's deadline, a move that forced Amtrak to cancel some routes, putting pressure on lawmakers to intervene sooner than expected. President Biden, who has pushed the parties to strike a deal, is attempting to craft a contingency plan to transport goods if railroads shut down. Okay, I'm listening. Love to hear how you plan to do that in a trucker shortage. And an airline pilot shortage, by the way. This is going to get interesting. We are working with Oh, no, that's Pierre. Let's get the script out. We are working with other modes of transportation, including shippers and truckers, air freight, all of which, by the way, have worker shortages, to see how they can step in to keep goods moving in case of a rail shutdown. Token Diversity Hire. Wow, I can't even insult her without tripping over my own tongue. Token Diversity Hire told reporters on Tuesday. Senators Richard Burr of North Carolina and Roger Wicker of Mississippi on Monday night unveiled a joint resolution that would impose a PEB contract recommendations the outcomes of railroads and their customers are pushing for. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said Monday that Congress would pass legislation if need be to stop a strike. That is political suicide. That is desperation right there, because to turn your back on one of the historic biggest guaranteed Democrat voting blocks in history, that is a desperation move. There are not enough woke college students to hold you up after you do that right before the midterms. Some Democrats have privately floated proposals that would enact more worker-friendly contract, according to the people with knowledge of the discussions. But party leaders are hoping Congress won't have to intervene at all. Democrats face a similar dilemma. Any resolution would require 60 votes to pass the Senate, meaning 10 Republicans would need to sign on to the deal. And some GOP lawmakers have already signaled that they'll side with the railroads. The PEB recommendations are a fair and appropriate solution to a years-long negotiation process, but labor unions are continuing to hold the entire nation's rail system hostage as they demand more, Burr said in a statement. This just got interesting, you guys. Randy highlighting this perfectly, given the direction of the Dems. It didn't even take official communism for them to try to force people to work against their will. Based. Let's see. Congress last voted to end the railroad strike 30 years ago. If they cannot agree on contract terms, lawmakers would simply extend the cooling off period to prevent a walkout. Good luck. But the White House is also weighing in on this. I love that the word urgently is into this one. White House urgently discussing contingency plans amid rail shutdown threats. Whichever intern is pulling Biden's strings right now is looking around the Situation Room, looking around saying, crap, what are we going to do? And somebody else came up and said, hey, I know, we'll put them on trucks. And as I mentioned, somebody else came out and said, oh, wait, we have a trucker shortage. Oh, we'll put it on air. Oh, wait, we have a pilot shortage. And by the way, you made this bed. Let's just, for curiosity's sake, let's see what CNN is saying on their video feed. And then we'll go look at what the White House has to say.
Wolf, we have seen 90 straight days of falling gas prices. That is good news for U.S. consumers. Today, we stand at $3.72 a gallon. That is a substantial drop from where we were in June of just this year, when we set an all-time record of $5.02 a gallon. But it's not quite where we were a year ago when gas prices were at $3.18 a gallon. And this is all happening because we are seeing lower prices of oil, and that's on fears of a recession, but also because over the summer when gas prices were so high, Wolf, people weren't driving as much, so that demand for gas shifted downwards. And this is coming, as you mentioned, on the eve of this CPI report. That's that key inflation report that we've been tracking. Gas prices coming down are going to be making an impact. Experts estimate that we're going to see a month-over-month drop in inflation. That's because gas and energy makes up so much of that report, Wolf. And
Damn it. I did it again, folks. I think that some people are coming out here watching this just to see how many times I stop to watch a video, take a drink, and not hit the microphone button when I get done taking the drink. Because as I mentioned, we get straw noise when I go take a drink. That's why I shut the microphone down while we're watching a video to do it. And then I go back and do something stupid like that again. So, what it was that... what I was going with that too is this does appear to be some old news, because we're talking about the fact that, month over month this could fall, and well, yeah, how did that work out for you? But I didn't even think about that while we were sitting here talking about things that get transported by rail, that fuel and oil are the most common things that get transported by rail, because while it's feasible to put it into a tanker and put it into a truck, it's a pain to transport fluids, and typically when you're doing a fluid transport like that, it's a short-term thing. They get it by rail on the long distance. There are people that do take long-distance oil and fuel in truck. They're a rare breed, but typically it's taken by rail to a refinery or a distribution point and then loaded back into a truck and taken down to the service level streets of the fuel stations, the gas station or the truck stop or whatever. I didn't even think about that's going to spike in that too. Well, people are taking a victory lap over the fact that, hey, we brought gas down to $3.73 from $5, but we're still not down to where it was a year ago. All right. From CNN, though, the White House is urgently discussing contingency plans as the threat of a rail shutdown looms, with agencies across the federal government working through how they could potentially use federal authority to keep critical supply chains operational as labor talks continue to sit at an impasse. The work has ramped up in recent days as officials have grown increasingly concerned about a labor strike if freight rail labor negotiations fail to produce an agreement ahead of Friday's deadline, and President Biden personally called rail unions and companies on Monday while visiting Boston in an attempt to avert a rail shutdown, White House Press Secretary Token Diversity Hire told reporters. While officials have been closely watching the developments and have gotten directly involved in an effort to find a resolution for several weeks, accelerated efforts to plan a worst-case scenario underscore the stakes of an outcome that would lead to massive supply chain disruptions and dual-pronged political and economic risk. The White House is working with other modes of transportation, including shippers, truckers, air freight, to see how they can step in and keep goods moving in case of a rail shutdown, a White House official told CNN on Tuesday. The official added the admin has also been working with relevant agencies to assess what supply chains and commodities are most likely to face severe disruptions and the emergency authorities available to keep goods moving. About 60,000 union members who work for the railroad are set to go on strike, including the engineers and conductors who make up the two-person crews on each train. Even though 45,000 other union members belong to unions that have reached tentative deals with the railroads, a strike by engineers and conductors would bring the freight rail system, which carries nearly 30% of the nation's freight, to a grinding halt. The Biden admin is trying to get supplies around the picket line, and Congress is trying to send people through the picket line and arrest people who are on the picket line. And this is your union party, folks. Oh, man. This is entertaining. Coming from a union house, this is especially entertaining. Anybody had any popcorn? I know I asked that already, but I guess I can't eat popcorn because I'm keto. Anybody have any ham cubes and cheese? And the other parts of this, Norfolk to halt bulk rail shipments from Thursday ahead of potential strike. Well, yeah, of course, they want to make sure that if somebody does go on strike, that person can go home at the end of the day, instead of having to jump on a train and take it all the way back home. From Kim Chipman and Ryan Bean. U.S. railroads are poised to stop shipments of farm products and other key goods starting Thursday as the industry braces for a possible labor strike that would cost the world's biggest economy more than $2 billion a day. Norfolk Southern said it plans to halt a unit train shipments of bulk commodities on Thursday ahead of potential U.S. rail worker strike the following day. The rail also said it would stop accepting autos for KTZed's facilities starting Wednesday. Other railways are likely to follow suit, according to one agricultural group. We're hearing several rail carriers are tentatively planning to wind down shipments, said Mac Fisher, chief economist at the National Grain and Feed Association, which represents most U.S. grain handlers. A halt to shipment of grains, fertilizer, fuel, and other crucial items threatens to hobble the U.S. economy at a time of rampant inflation and fear of a prolonged global economic slump. Food supply chains are especially at risk as farmers are gearing up for harvest and need to get their supplies to customers. Crops are especially in high demand due to the shortages from the war in Ukraine and weather woes across the globe. Our members rely on about 27 million bushels of corn and 11 million bushels of soybean meal every week to feed their chickens, said Tom Super of the National Chicken Council. Much of that is moved by rail. Norfolk Southern intends to cease taking vehicle deliveries for transit as of 5 p.m. local time Wednesday and close its intermodal gates as well at the time, the Virginia-based railway said in a notice. Representatives for BNSF and Union Pacific also signaled they were prepared to curtail service as the deadline looms. We must take actions to prepare for the eventuality of a labor strike if the remaining unions cannot come to an agreement, BNSF said in a statement. So, here's my take on the entire thing. First off, as I've mentioned numerous times since we started talking about this, the Democrat Party has turned its back on the union. One of their most reliable voting blocs over the last 3/4 of a century. And the back has been turned on it, officially. Well, it's been turned on it for quite a while, but officially. And every time you hear a Democratic politician or see it on Twitter talk about how they support the union and they want every job to be a union job, I want you, this is my assignment for you, to remind them of this. The fact that Congress is trying to make legislation to force people to work or cross the picket line. Number 2, what do I always say when there's a supply chain issue? Every time we go to the grocery store, get an extra can of tuna or an extra can of Spam or a can of vegetables, something that doesn't need to be refrigerated. And just put it in the cabinet or the pantry. Excuse me. And forget about it. Because, as they're pointing out, the chickens, the feed for the chickens is transported by rail, which means the chicken's going to get more expensive. The feed for the beef is transported by rail, which means the beef is going to get more expensive. The pig slop, which they can eat a lot of slop that none of the other animals can eat, is not going to get as expensive, but that's also going to go back up. Your vegetables are going to go back up. So pay attention. Do what it is that you need to do to make sure that you survive, and grab the stuff while it's cheap, because all the prices are going to go back up again. And what do we know about prices going up? They don't typically come back down easily. That's what we're seeing off the supply chain. Let's talk about the Democrat Party and the Republican Party acting badly. We're going to start with Tim Ryan, who, after the Independence Hall speech, decided that he needed to come back out and say this. From the Daily Wire. And I don't typically do 2 articles from the same outlet in a row, but with these both being on the same theme, we kind of needed to talk 2 Daily Wires in a row. From the Daily Wire, Democrat Tim Ryan, we need to kill and confront the MAGA movement. From Tim Meads. Tim Ryan of Ohio told MSDNC's Morning Joe that he's willing to work with any moderate Republican, but cautioned the mainstream GOP officials and Democrats need to kill and confront the MAGA movement. Hold on, I know what we need to be looking at while we're talking about this. I know exactly what we need to be looking at. Kill and confront the cockroaches. Exterminate them. I should probably not hold my hand up like that on YouTube. They're the source of all your problems. I have military might with Marines in my background. Ryan has attempted to rebrand himself as a moderate Democrat in his Senate race against the GOP candidate J.D. Vance, but critics say his language is evidence of his extremism. Yeah. I would love to see him lose his seat over this. The Democrats aren't right on everything, Ryan said on Tuesday, and I'm willing to sit down and have conversations about how we can move out of this age of stupidity and into an age of reconciliation and reform. How do we fix all these broken systems? Some of the answers will come from Republicans, not the extremists that we're dealing with every single day. We've got to kill and confront that movement. Tim, you gotta slow down on that. I mean, we already know that that's how you feel about it, but Tim. Let me get a refresh on this to see if this, the tweet with the video will load. There it goes. Yep. Daily Caller, Ohio Senate nominee Tim Ryan on Republican extremists. We've got to kill and confront that movement. With William Martin coming out and saying Tim Ryan wants to kill and confront the MAGA movement, Ohio Senator. This guy's a left-wing extremist who belongs nowhere near the Senate. Let's have a listen. Oh.
Some of those answers will come from Republicans. It's not the extremists that we're dealing with every single day. We've got to kill and confront that movement. But working with normal mainstream Republicans, I think that's going to be really, really important because we have to reform these systems. How do we fix all of these broken systems? Some of those answers will come from Republicans. It's not the extremists that we're dealing with every single day. We've got to kill and confront that movement. But working with normal mainstream Republicans, I think that's going to be really, really important because we have to reform these systems. How do we fix
And a lot of this, again, it goes right back to what I've been saying since that legendary speech on the first of the month, where we looked at this, and heard, hey, I have Republicans that I can work with across the aisle, and I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the evil MAGA Republicans. Right, because it's the same thing as what Tim Ryan is saying with this. He doesn't want to work with the people who are coming down on the populist movement. The people who actually want to do the work of the people. He wants to do the work of the people like Liz Cheney, like Mitt Romney, like the Bushes, who back down when you call them a racist. I mean, what do we... A lot of you aren't Republicans, but a lot of you are lumped in with Republicans because you don't worship this man. I'm not a Republican, but I get called one because I don't worship this man. But what do you do when somebody over on Twitter takes one of your tweets and looks and says, "You're a racist"? You sit back and you say, "Screw you." And a lot of the MAGA politicians that are coming in are doing the same thing. When somebody comes back and tries to pull the old faithful out of the playbook, "You're a racist," they come back and they say, on a government level, "Screw you. I don't care." But see, they're not used to that. They want to work with the Republicans where they say, "Liz Cheney, you're a racist." And Liz Cheney comes out and says, "Don't call me a racist. Okay, I'll do whatever you want. You want increased funding for your labor union? Okay, I'll do it. You want increased public and funding for public jobs? Okay, I'll do it. Just don't call me a racist. That's who Tim Ryan wants to work with. And that's who this guy right here wants to work with as well. But off the same vein of that, from the Daily Wire, nearly 2/3 of Americans, even most Democrats, say Biden's attacks on MAGA Republicans are dividing the country by a survey. And we've got a lot of numbers with this one, so strap yourselves in. We'll see what we've got. From John Rigolizzo. Nearly 2/3 of all Americans, including a surprisingly large majority of Democrats, believe the Biden admin's attacks on so-called MAGA Republicans are dividing the country. According to a survey of 1,277 U.S. adults conducted by INI and TIP between September 7th and 9th, nearly 2/3 of Americans, 62% agreed the White House's attacks on so-called MAGA Republicans increased division on the country, while just 29% disagreed. Majorities of Americans also agreed that Biden's attacks on MAGA Republicans endangers Americans' First Amendment rights and was a politically biased use of the office. Well, see, the 29% that disagreed believe that it'll unite the country because they'll have the opportunity to murder and slaughter all of their political enemies. Which means that everyone else will come out after they're done murdering and slaughtering their political enemies and sing Kumbaya around the fire. Let's see. President Biden's recent comments about Trump supporters espousing semi-fascism and accusing the former president's followers of representing an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic shocked many Americans, the outlet reported. Now, despite White House denials of ill intent, a majority of voters called Biden remarks divisive. The poll asked respondents to agree or disagree with the statement. President Biden's characterization of MAGA Republicans increases division in the country. A total of 62% agreed, including 37% who strongly agreed. Notably, self-identified Democrats agreed with the statement more than Republicans or independents. Fully 73% of Democrats agreed that Biden's remarks further divided the country, including 43% of strongly agreed, just 19% disagreed, and 9% strongly disagreed. More independents agreed with the statement than Republicans as well. 57% said Biden's remarks sowed further division, including 34% who agreed strongly, 29% disagreed, with 17% disagreeing strongly. Close to a majority of Republicans, 50% agreed, including 31% who strongly agreed, while 41% disagreed, including 31% who strongly disagreed. And really honestly, who could have seen that coming? When you come out like that and tell the world that a certain segment of people is the source of all your problems and needs to be exterminated, I mean, that's got some pretty important historical connotations. In what's probably the stupidest move in all of political history, especially given the fact that under normal circumstances, this would probably be a good idea because 15 weeks is the gold standard. Lindsey Graham has proven why he is unfit to be in office. Lindsey Graham proposes new national abortion restrictions bill from Rebecca Falconer. Before I read this article, and I already know the answer, but I have to ask the question. Lindsey Graham, are you excuse me. Because we're catering to an AM radio audience, or an audience that could use us to replace the AM radio, who might have their kids in the car. Lindsey Graham, are you stupid? Without the F word that I almost said. Are you stupid right now? Lindsey Graham introduced a bill on Tuesday that would ban abortion nationally after 15 weeks. Sugar, we will introduce legislation to get America in a position at the federal level I think is fairly consistent with the rest of the world, Graham said on Tuesday, announcing the legislation. The legislation includes exceptions for situations involving rape, incest, or risks of life and physical health of the mother.
If we take back the House and Senate, baby, I can assure you that we'll have a vote,
Graham added. Graham has previously introduced bills that sought to ban abortions nationally from 20 weeks. Now, under normal circumstances, this would actually probably be a decent situation. 15 weeks is pretty much the gold standard. Not only here, but over in progressive Europe. It's insanely uncommon in Europe to see a situation where, unless there's life of the mother, or rape or incest, and even there at rape or incest, that's increasingly uncommon, to see an abortion law that allows for on-demand after 18 weeks. That's extremely uncommon in Europe. 15 to 18 seems to be the gold standard around the world, and even around the US it seems to be the gold standard. It seems to be where everyone says is fetal viability. Where the fetus can, under major incubation, survive outside the womb. Now, if you're at 15 weeks, you've got a lot of technology that's involved in that. But that seems to typically be the gold standard. It's typically by 15 weeks. That's 4 months. You're 4 months along. You usually know who the father is at that point. Usually, not always. Maury has entered the chat. You typically said, okay, well, this happened. I'm going to accept this. I'm going to be the greatest mother in the world. And unless something major comes in, like you sit back and think to yourself, man, that experiment that I had while I was doing shrooms while my brother was in the room, I just don't know if that's what popped up, or something really, really, really out there like that is typically off the table by that point. But that's pretty much the gold standard. And under any other circumstance, 15 to 20 weeks would have been probably an acceptable point. But we just got done saying that the decision on this should be done at a state level, because different states have to cater to different populations. We just got done having that conversation, and now you want to come back and upend that and now say, oh no, sugar, it's all about just coming in and having that control after 15 weeks on a federal level. We just got done saying the states are the gold standard in this. You moron. Ron, I don't know if you know how biology works, but it's really hard to knock up a woman if you're not interested in women. And even though he comes out and says that, oh no, sugar, I love women, I'm totally straight. That dude is so deep in the closet, he's finding Christmas presents. So, some good news, by the way, coming off of this from Politico. Graham's abortion ban stuns GOP. From Burgess Everett, Marianne Levine, and Sarah Ferris. Lindsey Graham's anti-abortion legislation once unified the Republican Party. The 15-week ban he pitched Tuesday had the exact opposite effect. The South Carolina senator chose a uniquely tense moment to unveil his party's first bill limiting abortion access since the summer's watershed reversal of Roe v. Wade. It was designed as a nod to anti-abortion activists who have never felt more emboldened. Yet Graham's bill also attempted to skate past a Republican Party that's divided over whether Congress should even be legislating on abortion after the Supreme Court struck down the nationwide right to terminate pregnancies. And some fellow Republicans said that they were highly perplexed at Graham's decision to introduce a new abortion ban, more conservative than his previous proposals, at a precarious moment for the party. Let's see. That is Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. I don't think there's an appetite for a national platform here. My state today is working on this. I'm not sure what he's thinking here, but I don't think there will be a rallying around that concept, said Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. I don't think there's much of an appetite to go in that direction. Graham's past pitches for a 20-week abortion ban attracted most Republican support, and even the votes of some Senate Democrats. His latest effort would leave in place state laws that are even more restrictive, while also imposing new limits in blue states that currently have none. Coming less than 60 days before the midterms, it's riled some Republicans who are watching their once dominant polling advantage shrink since the Roe reversal. Here's the thing, and this is the other stupid side of this. Politico points it out correctly. For the majority of this term, this Congress, the GOP has been able to sit back and say, it's the economy, stupid. Hey, look at your gas pump. Hey, look at your grocery bill. Hey, look at your utilities. Hey, you remember that vacation you could take last year that you can't take this year? Look at how little your wages are rising against inflation right now. While they're sitting here talking about all they could sit there and talk about all these things, and we're actually making a good message. Before the Roe reversal, there was a curb stomping coming for the Democrat Party, enough that they would actually be forced to look internally to their party and say, we got to figure out what's not working here. Politico is right. Once the Roe decision came down, and the fear mongering and the fear porn came out that, oh no, even in your blue states, the Republicans are going to try to force you to be raped by one of their people and carry every baby to term chained to a stove. And the messaging came in and sank in. It's a fallacy, but the message stuck with people. But with the supply chain issues and the fact that most states actually didn't seem to be interested in making an outright ban, this was actually starting to fade out of the news. People were starting to not talk about it. And then Lindsey Graham comes out 60 days before the election and decides to jack it back into the news the same way that, I guess we won't talk about what his pool boys are doing to him, because we are trying to compete with the AM radio folks. Let's see. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said that question about the bill should be directed to Graham and that most Republican senators prefer this to be handled at the state level. Senator John Cornyn suggested Graham had gone a little bit rogue with his latest legislation. That wasn't a conference decision, that was an individual senator's decision. And going on with that same, we'll actually be extending this a little bit further, reading from Insider. Mitch McConnell, in, again, one of his rare moments of political clarity, Mitch McConnell throws cold water on Lindsey Graham's new 15-week abortion ban after anti-abortion activist says GOP leader cleared the pathway for this to happen. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on Tuesday threw cold water on a new bill from Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina that would outlaw most abortions nationwide after just 15 weeks of pregnancy. At a press conference with anti-abortion rights advocates earlier on Tuesday, Graham told attendees that the key to holding the vote on this bill, which includes exceptions only for rape, incest, and life of the mother, was for Republicans to regain both chambers of Congress.
If we take back the House and the Senate, sugar, I can assure you we'll have a vote on our bill.
What's this our? What's this we? But when asked whether he would hold a vote on the bill if his party regained control of the currently evenly split Senate, McConnell said most Republicans don't support federal legislation on abortion. Ooh, we've got one from the recount where we actually can see Mitch McConnell and MK Raju. Let's get this out here. Let's find the timestamp on here. 6:51, September 13th. On-air production. Where is it? Yep, here it is. So let's listen to what Mitch McConnell had to say to Manu Raju of CNN.
Lindsey Graham has this 15-week abortion ban. If you take the Senate, will you put this on the floor of the Senate for a vote, or will you commit to leaving this issue entirely to the states?
Well, with regard to his bill, you'll have to ask him about it. In terms of scheduling, I think most of the members of my conference prefer that this be dealt with at the state level.
Lindsey Graham has this 15-week.
A very, very rare moment of clarity from the minority leader. He has fewer and fewer of those lately. Here's the problem that I have with this. It's not necessarily that it's out there, because once it's out there, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. Think about the Medicare Social Security bill that was brought up by Rick Scott and got exactly 0 co-sponsors. In spite of the fact that it got exactly 0 co-sponsors, that is still the fear porn that is drug out by progressive activists and President Biden when he wants to say, hey man, I hate them, they're extremist Republicans, man, come on, man. Nobody in the Senate wants to talk about that because even the Senate Republicans are borrowing out of Social Security to make their plans and sometimes not paying it back. To make their budgets, to make their plans, they're taking money out of Social Security and not paying it back half the time. And when they need to pay it back, they just go back and print more money. So they don't want that to go away as much as most of the rest of us on the ground do. But yet, that's still drug out by Biden as, hey man, you better give us all 435 seats in Congress and do everything you can to get us all 100 seats in the Senate. Otherwise, those evil Republicans are just going to go back and eliminate Social Security. You know, I got this bill from Rick Scott, and that's the standard of the Republican Party. They're going to do the same thing with this. Mitch McConnell looks at this and says, oh, we're not going to bring this down to a vote, okay? Because we want this done at a state level. And just you watch before midterms. Kamala, or Joe, or Rachel Maddow, or red-haired bobblehead over on MSNBC are going to be out here saying, this is the gold standard that Republicans want. They want to limit your ability to 15 weeks on a federal level, in spite of, again, this bill having exactly 0 co-sponsors. I can't stand Lindsey Graham. Man, I can't stand Lindsey Graham. Alright. Chick-fil-A got into the news here. From the Daily Mail, Chick-fil-A is slammed as racist after telling a black customer his community would be the first to know when spicy chicken nuggets returned to its menu. And the award for the biggest nothing burger in the world goes to... from Ty Roush for DailyMail.com. Chick-fil-A has been accused of being racist. Again. I mean, at this point, it's Chick-fil-A. They don't open on Sundays! And conservatives love them! That's Chick-fil-A being accused of being racist isn't a headline, it's the name of the newspaper. Chick-fil-A has been accused of being racist after telling a black Twitter user that his community would be the first to know when a new menu item is stocked. On September 9th, the fast food company responded to a user querying when the chain will add spicy chicken nuggets to its menus. Your community will be the first to know if spicy items are added to the permanent menu, Don, Chick-fil-A wrote. The chain was immediately hit with a flood of tweets accusing it of being racist, and with users asking whether it was referring to the black community. What do you mean, your community, man? One response reads. Your community, another tweet says, I'm going to need an explanation for that comment. Our community wouldn't want to think that there were some racial undertones behind that. Well, part of the problem is when you go out specifically looking for racism, you typically find it. Jerome, 8 hours later and this racist tweet is still up. Damn, I am in shock. Actually, no, I'm not. It's Chick-fil-A. I shouldn't expect anything less. You know, I'm on a diet right now, trying to stay low carb, but I think it might be time to go buy some Chick-fil-A after work tonight. A Chick-fil-A spokesperson responded to the social media backlash in a comment on NBC News. And yes, unfortunately, they apologized. I would probably tell them to go screw themselves if I was in the same situation. The response was a poor choice of words, but it was not intended in any way to be insensitive or disrespectful, they said. We often use the term community in a broader sense to talk about places where we operate restaurants and serve the surrounding community. Yeah, again, that's probably the correct statement to that, but if you go out looking for racism, you typically find it. Even if you have to make it up, you typically find it. So Chick-fil-A has apologized for this, which is stupid. But I'm probably going to go get a chicken sandwich after work. Speaking of Twitter backlash, Border Agency chief condemns retweets of offensive comments by ex-Trump advisor from official CBP account. From Josh Campbell. Why do these government agencies have official accounts like this? I don't understand. The head of Customs and Border Protection on Saturday condemned several retweets from an official CBP regional Twitter account of offensive tweets made earlier in the day by a former top advisor in the Trump admin. The official CBP Twitter account for the agency's West Texas sector retweeted 2 posts by Stephen Miller, a former White House speechwriter and senior advisor under President Trump. In one of the tweets, Miller wrote, "Violent criminals lay waste to our communities undisturbed, while the immense power of the state is arrayed against those whose only crime is dissent. The law has been turned from a shield to protect the innocent into a sword to conquer them." You know, I actually don't typically agree with Stephen Miller, but he hit that one out of the park. Totally unacceptable and disappointing that any CBP Twitter account was used to retweet offensive unauthorized content. CBP Commissioner Chris Magnus said in a tweet, "We've removed the content and will deactivate the account. The Office of Professional Responsibility will investigate. This must not happen again." Though Miller did not elaborate on his remark about those whose only crime is dissent. Well, that actually might have something to do with that. His tweet came as the Justice Department has criminally charged numerous individuals for their alleged role in the January 6th selfie fest on the U.S. Capitol and ongoing investigations and efforts to undermine the certification of the 2020 election. In another tweet by Miller that was shared by the regional CBP office, he wrote, "The media's greatest power is its ability to frame what is a dire national crisis, e.g. cops are racist, some are 20, and what is not. Biden's eradication of our border means we're no longer a republic. He's ended nearly 250 years of constitutional government. The media is silent." Now, if an individual Border Patrol agent had these views, I would not be surprised, or I would condemn them. But I will go with what CBP is saying with this and saying, no, you shouldn't be doing this on an official account because that is highly partisan. From an official government account that is not supposed to be partisan, I partially wonder. number one, why they're following Stephen Miller, but two, if somebody who was coming out retweeting thought that he was on his personal account and was actually on the CBP account. Either way, as much as I agree with what a lot of what Miller's saying with this, and I don't say that very often, this should not have been done by an official account. The government is supposed to be nonpartisan. It's clearly not, as we see from this. It's clearly not, but it should be. Speaking of the border, Koch University hire back in the news.
Administration, which largely just tried to build a wall, an ineffective wall, along the border and couldn't even finish that in 4 years. We're certainly doing a lot more to secure the border and could be doing even more if Republicans would stop their obstruction. That's it. I'm going to just take one last administration, which largely just tried to.
So one administration tried to put an actual physical barrier that people would have to work for to get people to stop, or to actually come into this country. And the other one left large portions of that wide open, basically until a court told them they had to go back and finish it. And they claim that they're going to go back and do more. Oh, look, MAGA Christians is trending. That'll probably be an informative. Oh, and MAGA communism. The world is stupid. From the Blaze, some good news. Ohio teachers now able to save kids' lives by training up and packing heat. From Joseph McKinnon. Based. Ohio's House Bill 99 went into effect on Monday, enabling authorized teachers, principals, and other staff to carry firearms in the classrooms. Previously, carrying firearms in a school safety zone was prohibited with the exception of persons employed as security officers or others with written authorization from the Board of Education. A 2021 Ohio Supreme Court ruling required that those so authorized must undergo 700 hours of peace officer training or have 20 years of law enforcement experience. Peace officer training can be a financial and logistical obstacle to some educators who might otherwise be keen to safeguard children under their supervision. After all, basic peace officer training costs can exceed $5,000 and a minimum of 737 training hours are required. This law alternatively requires up to 24 hours of initial training and 8 supplemental training hours annually. Now, school employees need not be trained peace officers to carry firearms so long as they have not been hired in the capacity of special police officer or security officer. They complete certain specified training requirements as approved by the Ohio School Safety Center. The district or school provides public notice that it has authorized one or more persons to be armed within a school, and they submit to an annual criminal records check. Based. Republican State Rep Thomas Hall introduced the bill, noting it is necessary in areas where first responders are few and far between. Some of the inner city schools have police officers at their school. Some of these rural schools don't have that luxury. Mike DeWine signed the bill into law on June 13th, and now it goes into effect. As far as where this goes, I've often said that this is the answer. And I know that, they like to come back out, the opponents of this like to come out and say, that the teachers might raise their gun against the student. What are we going to do when that happens? That is always an inherent risk, but there's also always an inherent risk that you could step out your front door tomorrow and get hit by a Buick. It doesn't always happen, but it's always an inherent risk. There is an apartment building, by the way, across the street from here, from where I'm sitting right now. And I can see, I can't see that building itself. It's just a little bit through the tree line. But I could see the first responders when it happened, when I think it was last summer. Yeah, it was last summer. Middle of the summer. Out of nowhere, there was, ironically, it was a Buick. And I've been saying get hit by a Buick long before when I first started talking about the Pinko Pox. And the inherent risks of that, because you might go outside and you might catch it. But just out of nowhere one day, and this building, by the way, is set, I would say a good 50 feet off the road. And I looked out one day and I saw police cars. I didn't hear anything, but I looked out one day and I saw police cars, first responders sitting out across the street. I couldn't figure out why, and I looked across and there was a Buick buried up to its back doors in an apartment building across the street. The inherent risk is always there. The only way to escape risk is to live your life in a bubble, in your safe room. So that is, of course, always an inherent risk. But they have put numerous safeguards into place to try to mitigate some of that risk. So that the other risk of a school shooter, either designated by the state or the federal government, I mean, that never happens, or somebody who actually did just lose it, went into a school to try to have a hostage situation, goes in there. The risk is mitigated because now they actually might face some sort of pushback on that. Somebody might be able to stand up to them before the police get in there. Uvalde. I've gone further than this. Now, as far as they do have to come out and post that one of the staff members is armed in the school. I don't know if they have to let the public know which staff member is armed. And that's kind of where I differ with a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, well, I want the teachers to be able to open carry, so everybody knows not to screw with that teacher. I don't want that either. Because there are going to be objectors. And for the most part, the people who would perpetrate such a crime are going to know where the objectors are. They're going to know which hallway they can go down and say, Miss Jenkins, the peacenik, would never carry anything. In fact, she advocates against them. So we can go down this hall and commit a slaughter and not have to worry about it. Whereas I want, if I had my ideal, I would say, okay, yes, we know that the staff is armed in the school, but we don't know which school. So that if somebody is coming up to try to perpetrate a hostage situation, a school shooting, a postal event, or something like that, I want that person to have to stop and think every time he turns to go down a corridor and think, is Mr. Brown going to waste me? Is he the one that's carrying? Is he going to waste me if I go down this hall? Hey, this hall, this one. Oh wait, no, Mr. Anderson's down there and I know he hunts. Is he going to be the one that does this? And I would really like that fear of God in somebody where he doesn't know if the next hall that he turns down is going to be his last. Instead of knowing full well who it is and which halls to avoid and which halls to go for. That's just my thought on it. We are running up on the clock. I'm just looking over here and seeing it's already 9:20. Speaking of school shootings, some good news again. Bad news, the fact that they're able to come back out and perpetrate this, but good news that there was nothing to worry about. From ABC 13 Eyewitness News. There was no active shooter at Heights High School, says Houston Police Chief. The call of an active shooter at a Houston ISD's Heights High School on Tuesday that prompted a huge police presence and panicked parents and students was a hoax, police said. Law enforcement officers surrounded the campus located at 413 East 13th Street on Tuesday afternoon, searching for a potential suspect as they cleared the campus. No suspect was found, no shots were fired, and no one was injured. The staging area was set up for parents at the corner of 306 East 15th Street and Columbia Street to gather information about the situation came into focus. The Houston Police Department and HISD police continue to investigate the threat, though no evidence was found to substantiate the threat, the district said in a tweet. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turned issued a statement that thanked the police for their actions. I want to thank Houston Police, Houston Fire, the Harris County Precinct 1 Constable's Office, and Houston ISD for their prompt response at Heights High School. While the reports of an active shooter turned out to be false, we are reminded that student safety and school security are paramount on the minds of students and parents and employees of all school districts. Today's response to the emergency call reinforces how seriously our first responders take these incidences, and that illustrates the constant training they undergo to take such quick and responsive action. The hoax was one of several targeting school campuses across Texas and California on Tuesday. No arrests have been announced as investigations continue, but sources confirmed to ABC 13 investigates that at least 4 of the false alarm calls came from the same phone number. So, everybody's safe, thankfully. Unfortunately, it had to happen and it disrupted a day of learning, but everybody is safe, and that's the important part. Got a couple on the media, and I think that we might have to cut it after these two from the media, because it's 9:23. From the Daily Mail. Fired CNN pundit Brian Stelter gets new job as a fellow at Harvard to host discussions on threats to democracy. From Alex Oliveira for DailyMail.com. Former CNN woke wonder Brian Stelter has landed a fellowship at Harvard mere weeks after he was ousted from the news network amid a staff shakeup. Stelter dropped the news on his Twitter account, announcing he was joining the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard's Kennedy Law School this fall as its Walter Shorenstein Media and Democracy Fellow. This fall, I'll be on the Walter Shorenstein Media and Democracy Fellow, he wrote, convening discussions, some of which will be live streamed. Grateful to Nancy Gibbs and her team for the home. In a release, Harvard said Stelter's discussions would concern threats to democracy and the range of potential responses from the news media, and follow a format not unlike his canceled CNN show Reliable Sources, saying the talks would include media leaders, policymakers, politicians, and Kennedy School students, fellows, and faculty. The machine protects its own. And I know that I got a little bit light on top, especially with the stress of the debt, the identity theft that hung over my head for so long, and some of the housing shakeups that have happened this year. I know I got a little bit thin over here too. It happens. But I want to remind you, looking at this person, that I am 4 years older than Brian Stelter is. I am 4 years older than that person. All right, and the last one I think we'll do today. Is there anything else that we want to try to get to? I don't think so. I think that we'll probably do this and thing I hate tomorrow. I think I've got some that we need to go on for thing I like and thing that I hate. But we'll do this one. So Dave Smith, whom I don't know that I follow on Twitter, mostly because I guess I do. Mostly because I really don't even know who he is. Honestly. I know a lot of people on the Liberated Twitter side seem to like him, and a lot of people seem to hate him as well. I've never cared. I think I followed him because Elaine tried to have him on the suicide prevention stream. But he didn't wind up being able to come. Joshua came. I don't remember it, but they assure me that I talked to him. But David Smith tweets out, interesting to see Katie Tour of NBC having a bit of introspection here. It's unreal that every single member of the corporate press isn't confronting this reality. Let's listen.
There was just a Gallup poll out today that shows that the trust in media, newspapers and television is hitting an all-time low. People don't trust us, they don't believe us, and it makes me wonder if this job, as I'm currently doing it, is effective, but if it's doing more harm than good. I don't have a good answer for that. There was just a Gallup poll out today that shows that the trust in...
Now, I'm going to push back on Dave a little bit on this one, because I don't necessarily think that that Katie Tour is having a come-to-Jesus moment about this. She's having an open discussion, trying to probably get people to come back up and fill this up with the tweets of, okay, how do we sell our toxic brand of media to the American people? They don't trust us anymore. How do we change that? How do we take the customers away from people who are sitting in their living rooms talking to a microphone? I don't think that Katie Tour of NBC has as innocent of intentions off of this as she seems to make out that she does. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. I will apologize to Katie Tour immediately if I'm wrong off this, but really, honestly, I don't think I'm wrong. Alright, and I think that's a good break point for the day. So, we are going to head out of here for the day. But before we do, my regular Wednesday close is me talking about something that either I'm thankful for or restores my faith in humanity. I try to end out with good news on Wednesday, in one way or another. Now, fortunately and unfortunately, both at the same time, for what I'm thankful for right now, what I'm going to use for today's entry, I can't really talk a lot about it because there's a lot of docs involved in it. There's a lot of basically me telling people where I live and some actual details of my life. So I'm going to try to dance around this as much as I can, as strongly as I can, while still saying what the good news is. So I've mentioned it before, and I mentioned it earlier on today. I had an identity theft back. It happened in 2010, I believe it was. Don't want to go over the details of how it happened. I know how it happened, but it went down, and I didn't even know it was coming until basically it got through the courts, and it's been hanging over my head ever since. With that noted, it's been hanging over my head. It's actually what kept me from getting a mortgage throughout my entire adult life. There have been 2 big black marks on me. Well, I made the phone call yesterday and paid it off. And the woman on the other end of the phone, when she found out that it was something that I had not incurred on myself, tried to convince me not to go and pay it off. And I'm like, dude, it's been 13 years. I want this to be gone. I don't care at this point. This has prevented me from moving forward in my life, and I'm not going to sit around and wait for an investigation by you. I want this gone now. But that's paid for. And then another black mark out there, which again, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I had found out immediately, because I called the other big black mark that was on my credit, immediately as soon as I got done paying that off, and I said, okay, I need to figure out exactly how much I owe you so I can get this done and taken care of. And I called that particular creditor and said, okay, this is exactly what I need. I need to know how much I owe you and how we can get this out from over my head, because I want to go buy a house this spring. And the woman on the other end of the phone, who was, by the way, fantastic. The only reason that I'm not telling you to go to this company is A, you wouldn't be able to go to this company anyway, but B, because it would be a sell docs off of this, but man, this woman needs to have a promotion in her customer service. I've got to say that. She did call me while I was on stream, unfortunately, but she had no way of knowing that, and she wanted to make sure that I got the good news off of this. That particular debt had been forgiven 2 years ago. All the things that have prevented me from moving forward in my life are gone as of Monday, and it is a huge weight off of my shoulders. It's a massive weight off of my shoulders. Now, of course, the one that I paid off still has to work its way through the credit departments to get in, get reported, and get out, so it's off the systems entirely. But it's all gone. I can actually move forward in my life. Now, there is a 50-50 shot right now that when it does come time for me to go back and move forward in my life, buy a piece of property, start the Ed Pound, which is both because I want it to be a compound and also because I'd like to have a whole bunch of dogs. But once I start off and get out there and get the Ed Pound going, there's a chance that I might be moving out of this town too. And I love this town, but a place that I'm much, much more familiar with, which again, I'm not going to say the name out loud, even though most of you know where I'm talking about already. The houses in decent areas comparable to what we have here are going for about, give or take, 80 grand less than what they're going for here. And I know the area way better than I know here. And I know a lot more people in that area too. So it's some food for thought right now, but just to have that one little piece of relief, 2 pieces of relief, honestly, even though I don't like the way the second one turned out, it's still going to be good news. I do feel guilty over the fact that it had to turn out the way that it did, but it's still going to be good news coming down from this. It's a relief off my shoulders that I really needed at this point in my life. And I'm insanely happy for it. And there is a person that I know that's a friend of mine that needs some help, and being able to grab a piece of property is going to allow me to help him some more. And I've got another friend out there who would like to experience a climate with winters and maybe get out of his job from all the way across the country. And, while you're renting a place, it's really hard to go move somebody else in. But, when you own it, hey, come in here, stay here. We'll work out the rent once you get here. But get in here and get your butt on my couch so we can build you a bedroom and build you a life out here. Also, much, much easier to move a girl in if, I go down through the world and meet the love of my life. Even though I'm pushing 40, and that's probably not going to happen at this point. Much easier to move her into a home than into a little rented apartment. So, I know I've talked a lot about myself off at this point, but this is a relief. This is huge for me in ways that a lot of you guys who probably didn't have to go through a lot of this don't understand. But it's massive for me. This is huge, and I'm very thankful for it. And I'm thankful, by the way, for all the support. Because part of what helped me get to the point where I was at for this is people hitting the subscribe button over on Twitter, the PayPal link in the chat, which is not going on the YouTube side because I'm on the backup channel, or the PayPal link in the Twitch chat, or the lemons. A lot of what's helped me get to that point is support from guys like you. And ladies like you, because I know Joffre9 is helping out and throwing money in there too, which, by the way, I did take Joffre9's advice, and I signed up for Venmo as well, so I'm pretty pumped about that. Hopefully now I don't have to I can actually spend my money on a piece of property and not spend all of it in food, but, the gas prices aren't, or not the gas prices, the food prices are inflated, and it's about to get worse, so some of this may be offset, but just having that little bit of relief out from the top of me, it's amazing. I know some of you probably want a few more details, and I'll probably do a little bit more of that privately, but with that, it's 9:35, and I gotta go to work. Oh, I don't have to change the scene. We're already looking just at me. Haha. All right, let's head out of here for the day. Where's my outro music? So, thank you, everybody. I could probably take the outro music down just a touch, huh? I'm looking over on my bar. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really loud. All right. So, thanks, everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came by and heard me come out on my rant against Lindsey Graham, my rant against Mitch McConnell, my rant against the unions and the people who are currently opposing the unions that surprised you, and everything else that we ranted about today. It's a little bit higher energy today than usual. I got a really good night's sleep last night for obvious reasons. as we just talked about in the thing that I'm thankful for. So we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks, everybody. Come back here and join me tomorrow for more news, more commentary, and more contemporary. Definitely love seeing you guys over here. Definitely love talking. And love seeing all the chat that comes back out of here, all the support and everything else. I am so thankful for the audience that we have over here. And also, always, as always, join on Friday because we get the names in the notebook. And I do say a special thank you to everybody who did chat in the live chat throughout the week. And I always look forward to that. That is my favorite part of the contemporary lineup. So come back and join us here on Friday for that. And tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and things that I like and things that I hate. It is definitely going to be a great time. Definitely looking forward to seeing you guys here. Stick around if you're on Twitch for the raid, and we will see you next time over here on Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.